بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وأقيموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة وما تقدموا لأنفسكم من خير تجدوه عند الله إن الله بما تعملون بصير.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وصلى الله على محمد وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين. أما بعد فقد قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم إن الصلاة عمود الدين. Dear brothers and sisters, in this session I'm going to explain the rules of doubts in prayers. There are 20 or 22 kinds of doubts which one may have during prayers. Out of these doubts, 7 doubts or invalid doubts, those are doubts which invalidate the prayers, and those are doubts which if you face, you will have to offer the prayers once again. And 6 of those doubts are doubts that can be ignored. And also there are 9 other doubts which are valid doubts, which if you go through and which if you face in the prayers, your prayers will not be affected, your prayers will not be harmed, so it will not be necessary for you to repeat the prayers over again. Now, one by one, of course, these doubts are very difficult and very complex to learn and to keep in mind, because they are very much similar to each other, and some of them are very much confusing. Now, to begin with, I would like to explain the rules of the doubts which are invalid and which make the prayers void. The first doubt out of those 7 doubts which are invalid, the first doubt is the doubt which a person makes in regards to the prayers which consist of 2 rakat, of 2 units. If you doubt in the number of the rakats of a prayer which consists of 2 rakat, then the prayer is void. For example, if you doubt whether you have offered 1 rakat of prayer or 2 rakats or 3 rakat, then the doubt is invalid and you have to break your prayer and offer it over again. The second doubt is the doubt regarding the number of prayers either in and between 2 rakat or 3 rakat. For example, if you are offering the Maghrib prayer and before you complete the second sajda, you doubt whether you have offered 2 rakats or 3 rakats, the doubt between 2 rakat and 3 rakat will make your prayers void. So these are the invalid doubts that if you have in your prayers, you will have to break your prayers and start the prayers again, offering the prayers again. So doubt between 1 and 2 rakat and the prayers like Fajr prayer is invalid. Doubt between 2 and 3 rakat, whether you are offering Fajr prayer or Maghrib prayer, will make your prayer void and you have to offer your prayers again. Now these are the first 2 doubts out of those 7 doubts which I will mention. The third doubt is the doubt between 1 rakat and more. If you are offering, for example, a 4 rakat prayer, if you are offering a 4 rakat prayer and you start doubting whether you have offered 1 rakat or more rakats of prayer, 1 unit of prayer or more unit of prayer, then the doubt is invalid and your prayers will be void. This is the third doubt out of the 7 doubts. The fourth doubt is the doubt between 2 rakat and more, and that is before completing the second sajda. Of course, if you entertain doubt between 2 rakat and 3 rakat, 2 rakat and more, 2 rakat and 3 rakat, then your prayers will be void and you have to offer your prayers again. You have to remember that you start doubting before completing the second sajda. Of course, if you complete the second sajda and after completing the second sajda you start doubting, then of course the rule will be different. Of course, we will mention the rules later on and the doubts and the remaining doubts. The fifth doubt is the doubt between 2 rakat and 3 rakat or more rakats of prayer. If you doubt, but of course you might be offering any prayers, you might be offering a 3 rakat prayer, you might be offering a 4 rakat prayer. If you doubt or if you entertain doubt between 2 rakat and more than 2 rakat, between 2 and 3 rakat, between 2 and 4 rakat, and between 2 and more rakats, then your prayers will be void. The sixth doubt is the doubt between 3 rakat and more, between 3 rakat and 6 rakats. For example, if you doubt between 3 rakat, if you doubt in a 4 rakat prayer, whether you have offered 3 rakat or 6 rakat, or maybe if you doubt in the Maghrib prayer, which consists of 3 rakats, if you doubt whether you have offered 3 rakat or 6 rakat of prayers, then your prayers will be void. Maybe you might doubt between 3 rakat and 4 rakat, 3 rakat and 3 rakat and 6 rakat or more than 6 rakat, then your prayers will be void. And the seventh invalid doubt is when you doubt between 4 and 6 rakat or 4 and more than 6 rakats. 4 and more than 6 rakat, then your prayers will be void. Now I would like to quickly revise these 7 doubts, invalid doubts, because I think I could not properly explain it and brief. I have to revise it and say it again in quick words and quick terms. The first doubt is the doubt between and a 2 rakat prayer. You doubt whether you offered 1 rakat or 2 rakat, your prayers is invalid. The second doubt is the doubt the doubt between 2 and 3 rakats. For example, you are offering a Maghrib prayer and you doubt whether you offered 2 rakats or 3 rakats, your prayers is valid. Now this is the second doubt, the second invalid doubt. The third is you are offering a 4 rakat prayer and you start doubting whether you whether you have performed 1 rakat or more than 1 rakat. This is the third one. In a 4 rakat prayer, you doubt whether you have offered 1 rakat of prayer or 2 rakats of prayer, This is the third invalid doubt. The fourth invalid doubt is the doubt in a fourth rakat prayer. You start doubting whether you performed 2 rakats prayer or more, 2 rakat of prayers or more. You start doubting between 2 rakats and more than 2 rakats of prayer. But you are offering a 4 rakat prayer. So in the middle of the prayers, you start doubting whether you offered 4 rakat or more than 4 rakat. Yes, this is the fourth doubt. And the fifth doubt is when you doubt between 2 and 5 rakats. That's also invalid. The sixth doubt is when you doubt between 3 and 6 rakats of prayer. And the seventh doubt is the doubt when you start doubting between 4 and 6 rakats of prayer, or more than 6 rakats of prayer. So these are the 7 invalid doubts, which if you have in your prayers, you are required to offer your prayers all over again. The doubts are invalidating. The doubts make your prayers void.
يا دافع الخطوب يا جابر المعطوف يا من هو مندوبي فعفوك مطلوبي يا دافع الخطوب يا جابر المعطوف يا من هو مندوبي فعفوك مطلوبي يا ستار العيوب يا غفار الذنوب يا ستار العيوب يا غفار الذنوب يا علام الغيوب يا كشاف الكروب.
Of course, it has to be noted that when you start doubting, you have to try to think, try to figure out, or try to come to a conclusion about the doubt. If your doubt persists, if your doubt remains, and you cannot come to a conclusion, and you cannot decide whether you offered a certain rakat of prayers, then in this case, when the doubt persists, you have to act on these rules. And of course, if you just try to pressure your mind about the rakats of prayer, and then you come to a conclusion, or if you just surmise and you consider it more likely, like there is 70% of probability that you offered, for example, 3 rakats of prayer, then you can act according to the surmise. But doubt is when you have 50-50% chance or 50-50% probability. You cannot decide which way and which numbers of prayers or which rakats of prayers you offered. In this case, when you are in the middle point and you cannot decide, you have to act according to the rules which have been prescribed by the Grand Maraje, by the religious authorities. So, first of all, you need to make your mind, you need to think. And if the doubt persists, then you have to act like that. Now, I'm going to explain the doubts which should be ignored. There are, as I mentioned, there are, of course, 6 doubts which must be ignored, and which are, of course, in the best interest of the person who doubts to ignore them. There is no doubt that if you do not ignore your doubts, then it will either make your prayers void, or maybe you will have to offer your prayers again. But if you ignore them, then of course your prayers will be valid, and you are not supposed to offer your prayers all over again. As you might have heard, that a person who doubts very often, he is called Kasir Ash-Shak, or one who doubts very often, or one who doubts frequently. A person who is Kasir Ash-Shak, or who doubts very often, is not under the obligation to act according to his doubt. He has to ignore his doubt. Because he has an unsettled mind, he has an obsessive mind, he has to ignore all kinds of doubt, whether they concern, whether they relate to the rukun or to the rakats of prayer or to the recitation of the verses or to the zikr of the prayers. He has to ignore them all because he is considered to be a kasiru shak, or a person who doubts frequently. All doubts regarding the prayers are considered valid and should be ignored on the part of the person who is kasiru shak and who doubts very often. Now, of course, I have to explain those doubts which are ignored and which must be ignored one by one. The first, those 6 doubts, of course, there are 6 doubts which must be ignored. The first one is doubt about an act whose time of performance has already passed. Like, for example, during a ruku, a person doubts as to whether he did or did not recite Surah Al-Hamd. Now, this is the first doubt that has to be ignored. Of course, there is a general law in fiqh which is called qa'idah tajawuz. When you have transgressed, when you have passed that point where you cannot reverse, for example, you are already busy performing the sujood and you have started performing the sujood, or you are busy you are now in the ruku of your prayers and you start doubting whether you recited the hamd or not, or the surah or not. In this case, because you have crossed the point and you have already completed hamd and surah, then you cannot reverse, because you are doing the ruku, you are doing a basic element, and it's a rukun which if added intentionally or by mistake, your prayers will be void. So you cannot go back. You have to ignore your doubt, and you should not pay heed to your doubt. Ignoring your doubt means that you should not pay heed. You should not pay attention to your doubt. This is the first doubt that has to be ignored. The second doubt is doubt occurring after salam of prayers. Now, you have completed the salam, you have completed your prayers, and you have done the salam. All of a sudden, you start doubting about the rakats of prayer, about the units of prayer, about whether you performed the sajda or not, or whether you performed a certain rukn or not, or whether you recited a zikr correctly or not. Of course, since you have done the salam and you have completed the prayer, you should not pay heed to your doubt. The doubt should be ignored. This is the second doubt. The third doubt, which should be ignored, is the doubt after the time of prayer has passed already. You have offered your prayer. For example, you have offered the Fajr prayer, and now the sun has risen, the time has passed, and there is no way to offer the same prayer again. Then the doubt which you have after the time has passed, after the time of the prayer has passed, then you cannot perform, and the doubt has to be ignored. The same is true if you just, for example, if you have offered the first rakat, and you are offering now the second rakat, you are in the second rakat, or maybe you are in the third rakat or the fourth rakat, the time has passed. You start doubting about the first rakat, whether you offered hamd and surah in the first rakat or not, then you cannot compensate. You cannot go back, you cannot reverse, and the doubt should be ignored. Either because you have passed that point, because you are now busy doing a second rakat, and you you are now busy, you have now crossed that point, or because the time has passed. So these two doubts have to be ignored and should not be taken into account. Now the third doubt, the doubt of a person who doubts too much. I actually mentioned this doubt. Of course, a person who doubts too much has to ignore all his doubts. It is because of his ease and because of his comfort and because of his convenience. A person who is suffering from some kind of obsession, he must ignore his doubt. He cannot go back. He should consider and decide as if he has completed and performed all the prayers correctly. Of course, there is a difference between a person, a kasiru shak, and a person who is suffering from waswas, or from kind of a disease which make a person consider everything as impure. So there is a difference between one who doubts very often and one who is suffering from obsessive compulsive disorder. There is a difference between them, and you should not confuse between kasiru shak and waswas. Waswas is a person who is suffering from obsessive compulsive disorder or OCD. So both of them have to ignore their doubt. Both of them have to act like ordinary people. But kasiru shak is one who should ignore all his doubts. But a person who is suffering from OCD or from compulsive disorder must consider everything as clean. He should not wash his hands and face and clothes again and again. He is not, because Islam wants him to be at ease. Islam wants him to be comfortable. Islam wants him to be at rest. Now the next doubt which should be ignored is the doubt by the Imam. One who, of course, the Imam is one who leads the prayer. If he doubts and you know about the number, the number of the prayers, you should not pay heed to the doubt of the Imam. Doubt by the Imam about the number of rakahs when the ma'mum or when the follower is aware of the number has to be ignored. And similarly, the doubts of the ma'mum when the Imam knows the number of the rakahs has to be ignored.
ناجيتك يا رحمن ودعوتك يا ديان يا خالق الإنسان الله 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 يا خالق الإنسان الله الله الله.
Either you or the Imam doubts. So either you or the Imam knows the number of the rakats. So if the Imam entertains doubt about the number of the rakats, you have to ignore the doubt. And if you doubt about the number of the rakats, the Imam knows how many rakats he has offered, then you have to ignore the doubt. The doubt in this regard is of course valid. It has to be ignored, and you cannot pay heed to the doubt. And the sixth doubt, which is the last doubt that must be ignored, is the doubt which occurs in mustahab prayers. And of course, also in namaz ihtiyat. If you are offering namaz ihtiyat or you are offering in a mustahab prayer, all kinds of doubt should be ignored. And of course, you have to, when you are offering namaz ihtiyat, whether you offer a 2 rakat prayer or a 1 rakat prayer, because namaz ihtiyat can consist of 2 rakat and it can consist of 1 rakat. So you have to ignore the doubt. Also in mustahab prayers, you might doubt in the rakats of the 2 prayers of that, because mustahab prayers always consist of 2 rakats. So except namaz witr, which consists of 1 rakat, other prayers consist of 2 rakats, and they are offered in 2 units, in 2 rakats. So if you doubt about the number of the rakats in a mustahab prayer, you must ignore your doubt. All your doubts are valid. One thing that has to be, of course, that has to be said with the doubt by a kasiru shak, because I remembered it now, is that one who doubts very often, and he doubts between, for example, he is offering the Fajr prayer, he doubts between 2 and 3 rakat, or between 1 and 2 rakat, because he is a kasiru shak, he is one who doubts very often. Then of course he has to decide that he has offered 2 rakats, because in this way the prayers will be valid. He cannot decide that he has offered 1 rakat. He cannot decide that he has offered 3 rakat, because in that case his prayers will be void. So he should decide, if he, for example, he is offering the Fajr prayer, he should decide that he has offered 2 rakats of prayer. In that case, his prayers will be void. His prayers will be valid. And if he is offering the Maghrib prayer and he doubts between 3 and 4 rakats of prayer, he should decide that he has offered 3 rakats of prayer. He cannot decide that he has offered 4 rakats of prayer. In that case, his prayers will be void. He should decide that he has offered 3 rakats of prayer, and then he should say the salam and finish the prayers. His prayers will be valid. There are doubts, 9 other doubts, which are valid doubts, and I will explain them right here. What are those valid doubts? I will enumerate and will explain them one by one. Because we are running out of time, I have to explain them very quickly. After the second sajda, if a person doubts whether he has performed 2 rakats or 3 rakats, he should assume that he has performed 3 rakats of prayer. This is the first valid doubt. The second valid doubt is, if after the second sajda a person doubts whether he has performed 2 or 4 rakats, he should decide that he has performed 4 rakats and finish his prayers. He should decide that he has performed 4 rakats. He should finish the prayer, and then what should he do? He should then stand up to offer 2 rakats of namaz ihtiyat prayer. That is a must, because you should assume that you have offered 4 rakats of prayer. Because you cannot assume that you have offered 2 rakats of prayer and then offer 2 rakats of ihtiyat. Always assume that you have offered the greater amount of rakats, except when you doubt between 4 and 5 rakats. In that case, you will have to offer a sajda sahw. But in this regard, you have to assume, or you have to decide that you have offered 4 rakats, and then you have to offer 2 rakats of namazi ihtiyat or ihtiyat prayers. The second is that if a person doubts after the second sajda whether he has performed 2 rakats, 3 rakats or 4 rakats, he should decide that he has performed 4 rakats. And of course, after completing the prayers, he should perform 2 rakats of namaz ihtiyat prayer, standing, and 2 rakats in the sitting position. 2 rakats. In fact, he has to offer 4 rakats of prayer. 2 rakats of prayer he will offer in a standing posture, and 2 in a sitting posture. And if a person, now the fourth valid doubt is, if a person doubts after the second sajda as to whether he has performed 4 rakat or 5 rakat, as I mentioned, he has to offer 1 sajda sahw, and that will be valid. Sajda sahw is sufficient. He has to assume, of course, that he has offered 4 rakat, and then he has to perform 1 sajda sahw, and that will suffice. The fifth one is, if a person doubts At any stage during the prayers, whether he has performed 3 rakats or 4 rakats, he should decide that he has performed 4 rakats and finish his prayers. After that, he should offer namaz-e-ihtiyat of 1 rakat standing and 2 rakats and the sitting posture. This is the 5th. The 6th one, if a person doubts while standing, of course, as to whether he has performed 4 rakats or 5, he should sit down and recite tashahhud and the salam of prayer. Then he should stand up to offer namaz-e-ihtiyat of 1 rakat or give 2 rakats while sitting. So it's not necessary to stand, and namaz-e-ihtiyat can be offered in a sitting posture, except for those exceptional cases, as I mentioned, that in some cases you have to offer 2 rakats of namaz-e-ihtiyat in a standing posture and 2 in a sitting posture. And the 7th doubt, valid doubt, is if one doubts while standing whether he has performed 3 or 5 rakats, he should sit down and read tashahhud and salam to finish the prayers. After that, of course, he should offer 2 rakats of namaz-e-ihtiyat. The 8th one, if a person doubts while standing as to whether he has performed 3 rakats, 4 rakats or 5 rakats, he should sit down and recite tashahhud and salam of prayers. Then he should offer namaz-e-ihtiyat of 2 rakats standing and another 2 rakats in the sitting posture. And the last one, of course, if a person doubts while standing whether he has performed 5 rakats or 6 rakats, he should sit down and recite tashahhud and salam of the prayers. Then, of course, he should perform 2 sajda-e-sahw. And all, of course, the foregoing 4 situations, one should, as a recommended precaution, also offer 2 sajda-e-sahw for an extra qiyam. Of course, sajda-e-sahw is a kind of compensation. It's a way of making up the error. And I know that I have explained the rules very quickly, and it's very difficult to learn the doubts and to keep them in your mind. I hope if you have not learned the doubts properly and correctly, then I advise you to refer to the Risala, to the books of Islamic laws written by ground religious authorities. You have to practice them, to learn them, otherwise it will be very difficult to learn them. Inshallah, in the next session I will have another topic to discuss. Until then, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
ربنا يا ربنا يا ربنا
يا ربنا
واغفر لنا وارحمنا يا ربنا ربنا يا ربنا يا ربنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا يا ربنا يا ربنا ربنا يا ربنا يا ربنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا يا ربنا ربنا يا ربنا يا ربنا